Welcome, traveler, to a story that begins with a question that has haunted historians for centuries. How did a tribe of despised wanderers, rejected by every kingdom they encountered, transform themselves into masters of an empire spanning from ocean to ocean in just 200 years? What drove the Mexica people to build a city larger than London, Paris, or any European capital of their age, rising impossibly from the waters of a sacred lake? I am standing where it all began, on the shores of Lake Texcoco, where mist still clings to the water at dawn, where reeds whisper secrets of a civilization that defied every expectation. The air carries the weight of prophecy here, for this is where wandering outcasts witnessed an eagle devouring a serpent atop a cactus, and knew their centuries of suffering had finally ended. This is the complete story of the Aztec Empire, and I promise you nothing less than the full journey from beginning to end. We will walk together through every chapter of this extraordinary civilization, from the mythical homeland of Aztlan, where the migration began around 1111, through 2 centuries of wandering and hardship, to the founding of Tenochtitlan in 1325. We will witness the Mexica rise from servants paying tribute to foreign kings, to conquerors demanding tribute from over 400 city-states. You will stand beside emperors as they forge the Triple Alliance, watch warriors adorned in jaguar pelts capture enemies for sacred rituals, and explore markets where 60,000 traders gathered daily. We will enter the homes of common people, witness the training of elite warriors, understand the cosmic beliefs that demanded human blood to keep the sun rising each morning. And we will be there when strange omens appear in the sky, when ships carrying bearded strangers arrive from the sea, and when the greatest city in the Americas falls to conquest and disease. This matters because the Aztec story is not simply ancient history. Mexico City stands directly atop Tenochtitlan's foundations. The eagle and serpent remain Mexico's national symbol. Their language, Nahuatl, still lives in words we speak today, from chocolate to tomato to avocado. Understanding the Aztecs means understanding how empires rise through ambition and fall through forces beyond their control. If you enjoy these complete journeys through ancient civilizations, please subscribe so you do not miss our next exploration. Each week, we bring you the full story of a lost world, told with the depth and detail these remarkable peoples deserve. Let us begin our journey in the mists of legend, where a people called the Mexica first heard the voice of their war god, Huitzilopochtli, commanding them to leave their island home and seek a new destiny. Somewhere in the northern reaches of ancient Mesoamerica, beyond the boundaries of recorded memory, there exists a place called Aztlan. The name itself carries the weight of longing, meaning simply the place of whiteness or the place of herons. No map marks its location. No archaeological expedition has unearthed its foundations. Yet, for the Mexica people, this mythical homeland remains as real as the mountains that frame the Valley of Mexico, as tangible as the obsidian blades their descendants would one day wield in conquest. The year is approximately 1111 of the Common Era. 7 tribes dwell in caves carved into the heart of a sacred mountain called Chicomostoc, the place of 7 caves. Each tribe occupies its own chamber, each speaks its own dialect, each carries its own destiny. Among them, the smallest and least regarded, live the Mexica. They are farmers and hunters, weavers and dreamers, bound together by devotion to a god whose name thunders through their ceremonies like distant warfare. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird of the left, the portentous one of the south. This deity of sun and war speaks to the Mexica through priests who enter trance states, their bodies painted blue, their ears pierced with thorns of maguey. The god's message arrives with terrible clarity. The Mexica must leave Aztlan. They must abandon the comfort of the 7 caves and walk into an unknown future. They must wander until they witness a sign that even children will recognize: an eagle perched upon a cactus, its talons gripping a serpent. The migration begins not as conquest, but as exile. The Mexica carry their god in a sacred bundle wrapped in precious cloth, borne on the shoulders of 4 priest carriers who walk at the head of the procession. Behind them stretch families with children, elders supported by younger arms, warriors without wars to fight. They carry seeds for planting, tools for building, knowledge passed through generations of oral tradition. They carry hope wrapped in uncertainty. The landscape through which they travel defies easy description. Desert valleys shimmer beneath relentless sun. Mountain passes cut through volcanic ranges where snow persists even in summer months. Rivers appear and vanish according to seasons the Mexica must learn through bitter experience. They stop to plant crops, harvest what grows, then receive divine instruction to continue walking. Years blur into decades, decades accumulate into generations. Children born during the migration know no other existence. They learn to read the land for water sources, to identify plants that nourish and plants that kill, to construct temporary shelters that can be abandoned when Huitzilopochtli demands movement. These children grow old and die still walking. Their grandchildren inherit the journey as sacred obligation. The Mexica pass through territories claimed by peoples who view them with suspicion or contempt. They are outsiders, wanderers, a tribe without a city. Other groups have established themselves in fertile valleys, built temples to their own gods, created hierarchies of power and privilege. The Mexica possess none of these markers of civilization. They possess only their god, their bundle, their unshakable conviction that somewhere ahead lies a promised homeland. Huitzilopochtli continues speaking through dreams and visions. The god demands discipline. The god demands sacrifice. The god demands absolute faith in a destination that remains perpetually beyond the horizon. Some Mexica falter. Some question whether the migration serves divine purpose or priestly ambition. These doubters face consequences that reinforce the authority of religious leadership. By 1250 of the Common Era, the Mexica have wandered for nearly 140 years. Multiple generations have lived and died without seeing the prophesied eagle. The sacred bundle has been rewrapped countless times as cloth deteriorates. The original priests who heard Huitzilopochtli's command exist only in memory and song, yet the migration continues, driven by faith that transforms suffering into sacred duty. The Mexica are becoming something new through this crucible of wandering. They are developing the resilience that will one day build an empire. They are learning to survive where others would perish. They are forging an identity defined not by territory, but by destiny. The eagle awaits them somewhere in the south, patient as prophecy, certain as the sun that Huitzilopochtli embodies. The wandering continues southward through the 13th century, each generation carrying forward the sacred burden of prophecy unfulfilled. The Mexica enter the Valley of Mexico, sometime around 1250 of the Common Era, descending from the northern highlands into a basin unlike anything their ancestors had known. Here, 5 interconnected lakes shimmer beneath volcanic peaks, their waters reflecting clouds that drift between snow-capped summits. Lake Texcoco dominates the center, its brackish waters spreading across the valley floor like a mirror held up to the heavens. The valley is already crowded with established powers. Culhuacan claims descent from the ancient Toltecs, those legendary builders whose ruined pyramids at Tula still inspire reverence. Azcapotzalco controls the western shores, its Tepanec rulers extracting tribute from lesser settlements. The Mexica arrive as unwanted strangers, their reputation for fierce warfare and unsettling religious practices making them pariahs among the civilized lake peoples. They are permitted to settle only in the most undesirable territories, the rocky hillsides and snake-infested margins that others have rejected. Decades pass in this liminal existence. The Mexica serve as mercenaries for Culhuacan, their warriors proving valuable in regional conflicts, while their people remain despised outsiders. They absorb Toltec cultural traditions, learning the refined arts of their hosts, while maintaining their own fierce devotion to Huitzilopochtli. A catastrophic incident involving a Culhuacan princess drives them into exile once more, fleeing into the marshes of Lake Texcoco around 1323 of the Common Era. The marshlands offer refuge but little else. Reed beds stretch endlessly across shallow waters. Mud sucks at every footstep. Mosquitoes swarm in clouds thick enough to obscure vision. The Mexica huddle on small islands barely rising above the waterline, constructing temporary shelters from bundled reeds while their priests consult the sacred bundle and interpret signs. 2 years pass in this desperate condition, the tribe surviving on fish, waterfowl, and aquatic plants while searching for the prophesied location. Then, according to tradition preserved in painted codices and oral histories, the sign finally appears. On an island in the western portion of Lake Texcoco, a priest or chieftain witnesses the vision that generations have awaited. An eagle perches upon a nopal cactus growing from a rock, a serpent writhing in its talons. The bird spreads its wings toward the rising sun, its feathers catching morning light. Huitzilopochtli has fulfilled his ancient promise. The wandering ends. The year is 1325 of the Common Era. The Mexican name their new home Tenochtitlan, meaning place of the prickly pear cactus, honoring both the prophetic vision and their legendary leader, Tenoch. The island measures perhaps 12 square kilometers of marshy ground, unpromising territory that established powers have ignored. Yet, the Mexica see divine selection where others see only swamp. Construction begins immediately on the first temple to Huitzilopochtli, a modest structure of reeds and mud that will eventually become the foundation for the greatest pyramid in Mesoamerica. The sacred bundle finds its permanent resting place after 2 centuries of wandering. Priests establish the ritual calendar that will govern Mexica life, marking the days when offerings must be made to ensure the sun continues rising. The early settlement resembles a village of fishermen rather than the seed of empire. Reed huts cluster on platforms of woven vegetation and mud, the Chinampa's technique that will eventually transform the lake into gardens. Canoes provide the only transportation across waters that isolate the Mexica from their powerful neighbors. This isolation, initially a weakness, will become strategic advantage. The lake itself becomes their fortress, their highway, their sustenance. The eagle has found its perch. The serpent has been consumed. The children of Aztlan have become the people of Tenochtitlan, their identity forever bound to this island rising from sacred waters. The prophecy that sustained 2 centuries of wandering has delivered them to their destiny. Yet destiny and security remain distant concepts for the island dwellers. The Mexica have found their promised home, but they have not found freedom. The waters of Lake Texcoco belong to others, and the eagle's perch sits within the shadow of far greater powers. Azcapotzalco dominates the western shore, its Tepanec rulers commanding tribute from dozens of subject peoples across the Valley of Mexico. The Tepanec Emperor Tezozomoc watches the newcomers on their marshy island with calculating eyes. These Mexica possess nothing of value except their bodies, their labor, and their growing reputation as fierce warriors. Rather than destroy them, Tezozomoc chooses to harness them. The tribute demands arrive within years of Tenochtitlan's founding. The Mexica must provide warriors for Tepanec military campaigns, laborers for construction projects, and regular payments of fish, waterfowl, and aquatic plants harvested from the lake. They become servants to kings, their survival purchased through submission. The arrangement proves humiliating, but survivable, and survival remains the primary concern for a people still building their city from reeds and mud. The decades following 1325 witness gradual transformation. The first permanent stone structures begin rising from the island, modest temples honoring Huitzilopochtli and the rain deity Tlaloc. Priests establish ritual calendars, tracking the sacred 260-day cycle alongside the solar year. Each construction project requires permission from Azcapotzalco, each expansion of territory negotiated through tribute and service. The Mexica prove valuable mercenaries. Their warriors, hardened by generations of wandering and conflict, fight with desperate ferocity in Tepanec campaigns against rival city-states. Victory brings small rewards, captured territories that expand Mexica influence while enriching their overlords far more. The arrangement creates a paradox. Mexican military success strengthens both their reputation and their chains. Tenochtitlan grows despite subjugation. The Chinampa system expands, artificial islands of woven reeds and lake sediment, creating agricultural platforms that produce multiple harvests yearly. Canals thread between these floating gardens, transforming the original marshy refuge into an organized urban space. Population increases as refugees from other conflicts seek shelter under Mexica protection, swelling the ranks of warriors and workers alike. The temple to Huitzilopochtli undergoes its first major reconstruction around 1375, a modest pyramid that nonetheless represents growing ambition. Stone replaces earlier reed construction, the structure rising perhaps 10 meters above the island's surface. Sacrificial rituals honor the war god who guided the migration, though the scale remains small compared to ceremonies at Azcapotzalco or the ancient ruins of Teotihuacan visible on the northeastern horizon. Tezozomoc's reign extends across decades, his political genius maintaining Tepanec dominance through a combination of military force and strategic marriage alliances. The Mexica ruling lineage intertwines with Tepanec nobility, creating bonds of blood that reinforce bonds of tribute. These connections will prove crucial in the century ahead, providing legitimacy for future Mexica claims to regional authority. The fourth Mexica Tlatoani, or speaker-ruler, Itzcoatl, rises to power in 1427. His mother was a slave woman, his claim to leadership contested, yet his abilities prove exceptional. Itzcoatl watches Tezozomoc finally die after decades of rule, observing the succession crisis that follows. The new Tepanec ruler Maxtla lacks his father's diplomatic skill, his brutality alienating subject peoples throughout the valley. Opportunity approaches like storm clouds gathering over the mountains. The Mexica have spent a century learning warfare under Tepanec command, building their city stone by stone, expanding their population through careful cultivation of both chinampas and alliances. They remain servants, but servants who have grown strong in their master's shadow. The eagle on the cactus promised greatness, not eternal subjugation. That promise awaits fulfillment. The storm breaks in 1428. Maxtla, the new Tepanec ruler, makes a fatal miscalculation. He orders the assassination of Chimalpopoca, the Mexica Tlatoani, believing that eliminating leadership will crush any thoughts of rebellion. Instead, the murder ignites a fire that has smoldered for a century beneath the waters of Lake Texcoco. Itzcoatl ascends to power in Tenochtitlan, a man forged in the contradictions of Mexica existence. Son of a slave woman, yet nephew to kings, he embodies the transformation his people are about to undergo. His first act is not military, but diplomatic. Messengers paddle across the lake waters, carrying proposals to Nezahualcóyotl, the exiled prince of Texcoco, and to the lords of Tlacopan, three powers, each with grievances against Tepanec tyranny, each too weak alone to challenge Azcapotzalco. The alliance that emerges will reshape Mesoamerican history. Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan bind themselves through oaths and marriages, through shared tribute arrangements and coordinated military command. The agreement specifies that conquered territories will be divided, with Tenochtitlan and Texcoco each receiving 2/5 of all tribute, while Tlacopan receives 1/5. This mathematical precision reveals the calculating minds behind the pact. War canoes gather in the pre-dawn darkness. Thousands of warriors assemble on the causeways, their obsidian-edged weapons gleaming in torchlight. The Mexica have learned well during their century of servitude. They know Tepanec tactics, Tepanec weaknesses, Tepanec supply routes. Now, that knowledge becomes a weapon turned against former masters. The siege of Azcapotzalco lasts 114 days. Alliance forces cut off food supplies, intercept reinforcements, and systematically reduce Tepanec defensive positions. Maxtla watches his empire crumble from within his palace walls. Former subject peoples, sensing the shift in power, either remain neutral or actively support the rebellion. The Tepanec hegemony that seemed eternal collapses with stunning speed. When Azcapotzalco finally falls, the victors do not simply occupy the city. They burn its temples, scatter its population, and transform its central plaza into a slave market. The message resonates across the valley. A new order has arrived, and it will show no mercy to those who resist. Itzcoatl understands that military victory alone cannot sustain an empire. He orders the burning of historical codices, the painted books that recorded Mexica history as wandering servants and subordinate tributaries. New codices will be created, new histories written. The Mexica will remember themselves as chosen people destined for greatness, not as refugees who spent generations in subjugation. This deliberate rewriting of memory proves as consequential as any battlefield triumph. The Triple Alliance begins expanding immediately. Coyoacan falls, then Xochimilco, then Cuitlahuac. Each conquest adds tribute, territory, and warriors to the growing confederation. The pattern that will define Aztec imperialism emerges during these early campaigns. Defeated cities retain their local rulers but must pay tribute, provide warriors for future campaigns, and acknowledge the supremacy of the alliance. Tenochtitlan transforms physically during these years. Tribute wealth flows into the island city, enabling construction projects impossible during the era of servitude. The Templo Mayor grows larger with each military success, new layers of stone and stucco covering earlier structures. Causeways are widened, canals deepened, Chinampas extended into the lake. The city that began as desperate refuge becomes imperial capital. Its coatl dies in 1440, having ruled for 12 years that changed everything. The wandering tribe that arrived at Lake Texcoco a century earlier as despised refugees now commands the most powerful military force in central Mexico. The Eagle's promise, so long deferred, has begun its fulfillment. Yet, this is merely the foundation. Successors will build upon what Itzcoatl established, extending Mexica power to horizons he never imagined. The sun rises over Tenochtitlan, demanding blood and offering glory. The flames consume centuries of memory in a single night. Tlacaelel, the power behind the throne, has ordered the destruction of the old codices. Scribes who spent lifetimes preserving Mexica history now watch their work feed the sacred fires. The burning is deliberate, calculated, necessary. The past must be remade to serve the future. Moctezuma I ascends to the throne in 1440, inheriting an empire still finding its shape. He is nephew to Itzcoatl, chosen by the Council of Nobles, who recognize both his military prowess and his willingness to follow the vision Tlacaelel has crafted. The new Tlatoani will expand borders while his advisor reshapes the very foundations of Mexica identity. The codex burning represents something unprecedented in Mesoamerican civilization. Previous rulers preserved history, even unflattering accounts of defeat and subjugation. Tlacaelel understands that a conquering people cannot carry the memory of servitude. The painted books recording Mexica humiliation under Azcapotzalco, the tribute payments, the years of desperate survival, all of it must vanish. In its place, scribes create new histories showing the Mexica as destined rulers from the beginning. The rewritten codices trace Mexica lineage to the ancient Toltecs, those legendary predecessors whose collapsed empire still commands reverence throughout the region. Huitzilopochtli becomes not merely a tribal deity, but a cosmic force equal to the oldest gods. The wandering years transform from desperate flight into sacred pilgrimage. Every humiliation becomes a test of worthiness. Every defeat becomes a lesson, preparing the chosen people for inevitable triumph. Moctezuma I proves worthy of this manufactured destiny. His armies push eastward toward the Gulf Coast, conquering the Aztec peoples and their rich cotton-producing lands. Southward, Mexica warriors descend into the warm valleys of Morelos, claiming tribute from towns that have never seen the eagle standard. The empire doubles in size during his 29-year reign. The Great Famine of 1450 tests both ruler and realm. 5 years of failed harvests bring starvation to the Valley of Mexico. Lake Texcoco's waters rise, flooding the chinampas that feed Tenochtitlan. Moctezuma responds with massive public works, constructing a great dike to control flooding and protect the agricultural islands. The engineering project requires thousands of laborers and demonstrates imperial capacity to reshape nature itself. Tlacaelel's influence extends beyond historical revision into the very structure of Mexica society. He codifies the laws governing tribute, warfare, and sacrifice. The flower wars emerge during this period, ritualized conflicts with neighboring states designed to capture warriors rather than conquer territory. Tlaxcala, Huexotzinco, and Cholula become permanent enemies in this sacred theater of combat. The Templo Mayor undergoes its fourth major expansion under Moctezuma I. Each military victory brings resources for new construction. Conquered peoples send not only gold and jade, but skilled craftsmen to beautify the growing pyramid. The twin shrines to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc rise higher above the city, visible from every shore of Lake Texcoco. Tribute flows into Tenochtitlan from hundreds of subject communities. The Codex Mendoza, created decades later, records the staggering wealth extracted annually. Thousands of cotton mantles, countless bundles of Quetzal feathers, jade beads beyond counting, cacao beans by the millions. The island city that once scraped survival from lake reeds now commands the surplus of an empire. Moctezuma I dies in 1469, having transformed a regional power into a continental force. His successor Axayacatl will continue the expansion, though the true architect of Mexica greatness remains Tlacaelel, who serves 4 successive rulers while refusing the throne himself. The advisor understands that power wielded from shadow proves more durable than power displayed on the throne. The burned codices leave their absence in Mexica memory. Future generations will know only the history Tlacaelel permitted them to inherit. The years of servitude become whispered rumors, half-remembered shame that official accounts deny. The Mexica become what their rewritten past declares them to be, chosen people of the sun, destined conquerors, inheritors of Toltec glory. History once burned cannot be unburned. The new truth takes root. The new emperor ascends in 1440, and with him rises a vision of empire that will reshape Mesoamerica forever. Moctezuma Ilhuicamina, whose name means the angry lord who shoots arrows at the sky, inherits a kingdom transformed by Tlacaelel's historical revision. He rules not as a humble chieftain, but as the divine representative of Huitzilopochtli on earth, heir to Toltec glory, commander of the sun's chosen warriors. The early years of his reign bring catastrophe that paradoxically strengthens Aztec power. In 1450, frost destroys the maize harvest across the Valley of Mexico. The following year brings locusts. Then drought settles over the land like a curse from angry gods. Famine stalks the streets of Tenochtitlan. Families sell children into slavery for a few ears of corn. The lakes yield fewer fish. The chinampas wither. Moctezuma and Tlacaelel interpret this disaster through theological logic. The gods hunger. The sun weakens. Human blood alone can restore cosmic balance. From this crisis emerges the institution that will define Aztec civilization, the Flower Wars, the Xochiaoyotl. The concept possesses terrible elegance. Rather than wars of conquest aimed at territorial expansion, the Flower Wars exist solely to harvest captives for sacrifice. Moctezuma negotiates formal agreements with enemy states, particularly Tlaxcala, Huexotzinco, and Cholula. These nations will meet Aztec forces on designated battlefields at appointed times. The goal is not to kill, but to capture, not to destroy, but to gather the precious flowers of war, living warriors whose hearts will feed the hungry sun. Training grounds across the empire transform young men into instruments of sacred capture. The Telpochcalli schools drill commoners in formation, fighting, and the art of taking prisoners alive. The Kalmakok academies prepare noble youth for command. Boys learn that death in battle or upon the sacrificial stone guarantees eternal glory in the house of the sun. The warrior ranks crystallize into formal hierarchy. Common soldiers who capture their first prisoner earn the right to cut their hair in distinctive fashion. Those who take 4 captives join the elite orders. The Cuauhocialotl, the Eagle Jaguar warriors, represent the pinnacle of military achievement. They don costumes of spotted pelts and feathered suits, becoming living avatars of cosmic forces. The Macoahuitl, that fearsome obsidian-edged sword, is designed not to kill, but to wound and disable. Warriors trained to strike legs, to hamstring opponents, to bring enemies down alive for binding. The atlatl dart thrower launches projectiles that pierce but do not necessarily kill. Every weapon serves the ultimate purpose of capture. Moctezuma leads campaigns that push Aztec influence far beyond the valley. His armies march east to the Gulf Coast, securing tribute from the Totonac cities. They press south into Oaxaca, subjugating Mixtec kingdoms rich in gold and jade. They venture into the hot lowlands where cacao grows, that precious currency more valuable than obsidian. The tribute system expands exponentially. Conquered cities must provide not only goods, but warriors for sacrifice. The great tribute lists record staggering quantities: thousands of cotton mantles, tons of maize and beans, precious feathers from tropical birds, jaguar pelts, gold dust measured in tubes, turquoise mosaics, amber, shells, rubber balls for the sacred game. Tenochtitlan grows fat on the labor of subjugated peoples, yet certain enemies remain unconquered by design. Tlaxcala, that stubborn republic to the east, could be overwhelmed by Aztec numbers. Moctezuma chooses otherwise. The Tlaxcalans serve a higher purpose as permanent enemies, eternal sources of sacrificial captives. The Flower Wars guarantee a steady supply of noble blood for the temples. The famine eventually breaks, rains return, harvests recover. But the theological apparatus constructed during the crisis remains. The gods have demonstrated their hunger. The Aztec state has discovered its cosmic purpose. Moctezuma rules until 1469, leaving an empire vastly expanded and a sacrificial system deeply embedded in political and religious life. His successor inherits an empire transformed by crisis and theology. Axayacatl takes the throne in 1469, a young warrior whose reign will see Tenochtitlan evolve from powerful city-state into engineering marvel. The island capital can no longer sustain its ambitions through conquest alone. It must master the very waters that surround it. The lake presents both blessing and curse. Texcoco's brackish waters threaten the freshwater springs that sustain the city. Seasonal floods destroy homes and temples with devastating regularity. The chinampas, those floating gardens that feed the growing population, require constant maintenance against erosion and salt intrusion. Axayacatl recognizes that military expansion means nothing if the capital itself cannot survive. Engineers begin the Great Dike Project, extending and reinforcing the barrier first conceived under Nezahualcóyotl of Texcoco. This massive earthwork stretches nearly 16 kilometers across the lake, separating fresh western waters from the saline eastern basin. Thousands of laborers drive wooden stakes into the lake bed, filling the spaces between with stone and packed earth. The dike rises above the waterline, wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast along its crown. The causeways multiply and strengthen during these years. 3 great roads now connect Tenochtitlan to the mainland, each broad enough for 8 warriors to march shoulder to shoulder. Wooden bridges span gaps at regular intervals, removable sections that transform the causeways into defensive barriers during times of threat. Canoe traffic flows through these openings in endless streams, carrying tribute goods and market wares into the island heart. Fresh water arrives through twin aqueducts from the springs of Chapultepec. Terracotta pipes carry the precious liquid across the lake surface, supported by the southern causeway. One channel flows while workers clean the other, ensuring uninterrupted supply to the city's fountains and reservoirs. The engineering precision required for this gravity-fed system demonstrates mathematical sophistication that rivals Roman achievements. The Chinampas expand outward from the island's original shores. Workers weave reed mats and anchor them with willow stakes driven into the shallow lake bed. They pile layers of aquatic vegetation, mud, and rich organic matter until the artificial islands rise above water level. Willow trees planted along the edges send roots deep into the sediment, stabilizing these floating fields against currents and storms. 7 harvests per year become possible on the most productive Chinampas. Maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and chili peppers grow in carefully planned rotations. Farmers travel between their plots by canoe, tending crops that seem to float upon the water itself. The system feeds a population approaching 200,000 souls, a density unmatched anywhere in the Americas. Axayacatl's reign also brings military setback. His campaign against the Tarascans of Michoacan ends in catastrophic defeat, the first major loss in Aztec memory. The Western Empire possesses bronze weapons and disciplined formations that blunt Aztec obsidian blades. 40,000 warriors march west, fewer than half return. The emperor himself bears wounds from this humiliation. Yet the city continues growing despite this distant failure. New temple platforms rise upon older foundations. The sacred precinct expands to accommodate larger ceremonies and greater crowds. Residential districts push outward onto reclaimed land. Canals replace streets in many neighborhoods, creating a Venice of the Americas where canoes serve as primary transport. Tizoc succeeds his brother in 1481, a ruler whose brief and undistinguished reign ends after only 5 years. Rumors of poison circulate through the palace. His commemorative stone depicts conquests that never occurred, a desperate attempt to manufacture glory where none existed. The empire marks time, waiting for stronger leadership. That strength arrives in 1486 when Ahuitzotl seizes power. The new emperor will push Aztec dominion to its greatest territorial extent, but his most lasting achievement rises in stone and mortar at the heart of Tenochtitlan itself. The Templo Mayor awaits its final, most magnificent expansion, a pyramid worthy of the gods who demand endless blood. Ahuitzotl wastes no time announcing his intentions to the cosmos. Within months of taking power, he commands the most ambitious construction project Tenochtitlan has ever witnessed. The Templo Mayor, already rebuilt 6 times since the city's founding, will rise again in unprecedented magnificence. Thousands of laborers converge on the sacred precinct, their tribute obligations transformed into sweat and stone. The pyramid grows layer upon layer, each phase encasing its predecessor like the rings of an ancient tree. Workers haul volcanic Tzontl stone from quarries across the lake, their canoes riding low in the water under crushing loads. Lime plaster coats every surface, brilliant white under the highland sun. Master sculptors carve serpent heads that emerge from the base, their obsidian eyes gleaming with terrible purpose. The twin temples crowning the summit honor the empire's fundamental duality. The northern shrine belongs to Tlaloc, rain deity, whose favor determines whether crops flourish or famine descends. Blue paint adorns its chambers, recalling the precious waters that sustain all life. The southern temple serves Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war, whose hunger for blood never ceases. Red pigment stains its walls, the color of hearts offered to ensure the sun's daily resurrection. Construction reaches completion in 1487, and Ahuitzotl orchestrates a dedication ceremony that will echo through history. Captives from recent campaigns arrive in Tenochtitlan by the tens of thousands. 4 lines stretch from the temple summit down the great stairway and along the causeways, extending beyond the city limits. The emperor himself performs the first offerings, his obsidian blade catching the morning light. The ceremonies continue for 4 days without pause. Priests work in shifts, their arms exhausted from the sacred labor. Blood cascades down the pyramid steps in rivers that stain the white plaster crimson. Spanish chroniclers later record numbers ranging from 20,000 to 80,000 victims, figures that historians debate but cannot dismiss entirely. Whatever the precise count, the dedication announces Aztec power in terms no neighboring state can misunderstand. Beyond the temple, Ahuitzotli's engineers reshaped the city's relationship with water itself. The island capital has always struggled with fresh water supply, dependent on springs at Chapultepec on the mainland shore. The emperor commissions a new aqueduct from Coyoacán, a double-channeled marvel that allows continuous flow while one side undergoes cleaning. Terracotta pipes carry sweet water across the lake on a causeway of stone and timber. The project ends in catastrophe. In 1498, the new water source overwhelms the city. Floods inundate streets and homes, destroying food stores and drowning the unfortunate. Ahuitzotl himself suffers injury during rescue efforts, striking his head against a stone lintel. The emperor who expanded the empire to its greatest extent never fully recovers, dying in 1502 from complications of that wound. His legacy endures in stone and memory. The Templo Mayor stands 60 meters above the plaza, visible from every corner of the lake basin. Tribute flows from over 400 subject states, filling warehouses with cacao, cotton, jade, and gold. The empire's population approaches 15 million souls, bound together by roads, markets, and the ever-present threat of military force. Yet, cracks appear beneath the magnificent surface. Subject peoples chafe under tribute demands that grow heavier with each passing year. The Tlaxcalans to the east remain unconquered, their hatred of Aztec rule burning with generational intensity. Distant provinces rebel with increasing frequency, requiring constant military campaigns to suppress. The empire has grown vast, but its foundations rest on fear rather than loyalty, on extraction rather than integration. The markets awaken before dawn, when the first canoes glide silently across the dark waters of Lake Texcoco. Tlatelolco stirs to life as merchants arrange their wares on reed mats, transforming the vast plaza into the greatest marketplace in all the Americas. By the time the sun crests the eastern mountains, 60,000 traders fill every corner of this commercial cathedral, their voices rising in a symphony of commerce that echoes across the water to Tenochtitlan's twin pyramids. The market plaza stretches across an area larger than any European trading center of this era. Specialized sections organize the chaos into navigable districts. Precious feathers from tropical birds occupy 1/4. Their iridescent greens and blues catch in morning light like scattered jewels. Obsidian vendors display volcanic glass worked into mirrors, blades, and ceremonial objects of razor sharpness. Goldsmiths present their finest work alongside jade carvers, whose pieces represent generations of accumulated skill. Cacao beans serve as the empire's universal currency, their value standardized across hundreds of tributary states. A single turkey costs 100 beans. A slave commands approximately 30 large cotton cloaks, each cloak worth between 65 and 300 cacao beans depending on quality. The mathematics of exchange flows through every transaction, creating an economic web that binds the empire together more effectively than any army. Professional merchants called pochteka occupy an unusual social position, neither noble nor common. They travel to distant lands under imperial protection, returning with exotic goods and invaluable intelligence about foreign kingdoms. Their trade routes extend from the deserts of the north to the jungles of Guatemala, carrying Aztec influence far beyond military reach. These merchant spies report directly to the emperor, their commercial journeys masking reconnaissance missions that prepare the way for future conquest. The market operates under strict regulation. Judges patrol the aisles, settling disputes and punishing fraud with immediate severity. Standardized measures ensure fair dealing, with clay containers of specific volumes used for grains and liquids. Counterfeit cacao beans, sometimes crafted from avocado pits covered in chocolate, bring harsh punishment when discovered. The empire's reputation depends on commercial integrity. Food vendors offer prepared meals to traders who spend entire days conducting business. Tamales wrapped in corn husks steam in clay pots. Chocolate drinks flavored with vanilla and chile. Warm merchants during cool morning hours. Roasted insects, lake fish, and wild game provide protein for workers who cannot return home until evening. The market feeds itself, a self-sustaining organism of commerce and consumption. Textiles represent wealth made visible. Cotton cloaks serve as currency, status markers, and practical garments simultaneously. Skilled weavers produce fabrics of extraordinary complexity, their patterns encoding social rank and regional origin. Tribute cloth arrives from conquered provinces, each piece representing labor, extracted from subject peoples who resent their obligations but cannot escape them. Salt, essential for preserving food in tropical climates, commands premium prices. Obsidian tools remain indispensable despite the empire's metalworking capabilities, their edges sharper than any bronze blade. Medicinal herbs attract healers seeking remedies for ailments both physical and spiritual. Paper made from bark fiber supplies, scribes who record tribute lists, astronomical observations, and sacred calendars. The market closes at sunset, its temporary structures dismantled until the next trading day. Canoes laden with unsold goods return to distant shores, while successful merchants count their profits in cacao beans and cotton cloaks. The plaza falls silent, awaiting tomorrow's renewal of the endless commercial cycle that sustains imperial power. This economic engine generates the wealth that builds temples, feeds armies, and maintains the elaborate court ceremonies that legitimize Aztec rule. Without Tlatelolco's markets, the empire would collapse within months. The flow of tribute depends on the flow of trade, each reinforcing the other in a system of extraction and exchange that reaches into every corner of Mesoamerica. Commerce and conquest prove inseparable, twin pillars supporting a civilization that measures its greatness in both blood and gold. The warrior's path begins in childhood, long before the first obsidian blade touches flesh. Boys born to the Aztec world enter a society where martial excellence determines everything, where the capture of enemies in battle offers the only reliable route to status, wealth, and divine favor. From their earliest years, they learn that the gods hunger for warriors, that the sun itself depends on their courage. Training commences at the Telpachgali, the House of Youth, where commoner boys gather at age 15 to learn the arts of war. Here, veteran warriors drill them in formation movement, shield positioning, and the precise angles of attack that maximize capture rather than killing. The goal is never mere slaughter. A dead enemy feeds no god. only living captives, dragged struggling up temple steps, satisfy the cosmic debt that keeps the universe in motion. The curriculum proves brutal and comprehensive. Young men carry heavy loads across mountain terrain, building the endurance needed for campaigns that stretch hundreds of kilometers. They practice with wooden weapons until their muscles memorize every strike and parry. They learn to read terrain, to identify ambush points, to move silently through jungle and highland alike. Sleep deprivation teaches them to fight exhausted. Hunger teaches them to fight starving. Noble sons attend the Kalmakak, where military training interweaves with priestly education and administrative skills. These future commanders study strategy, logistics, and the diplomatic arts that precede warfare. They memorize the histories of past campaigns, analyzing victories and defeats with the precision of scholars. Leadership requires more than personal bravery. It demands the ability to coordinate thousands of warriors across unfamiliar territory. The first battle transforms a student into a warrior. Young men advance in groups of 4 or 5, working together to subdue a single enemy combatant. Success brings the right to wear distinctive hairstyles and clothing that announce their achievement to all who see them. Failure brings shame that clings like smoke, marking the unsuccessful as less than complete men. Advancement follows a rigid hierarchy measured in captured enemies. 1 captive earns basic warrior status. 2 captives bring the right to wear certain feathered ornaments. 3 captives unlock access to the prestigious military orders. 4 captives grant entry into the councils, where campaigns are planned and tribute assessed. Each level brings material rewards, land grants, exemptions from tribute, and the right to multiple wives. The Jaguar warriors and Eagle warriors represent the apex of military achievement. These elite orders accept only those who have proven themselves repeatedly in combat. Warriors who have taken 4 or more captives in battle. Jaguar warriors don the spotted pelts of their namesake predators, fighting with the ferocity and cunning of jungle cats. Eagle warriors wear feathered suits and helmets shaped like raptor heads, embodying the solar bird that carries the sun across the sky. Their weapons reflect sophisticated understanding of combat mechanics. The Maquahuitl, a wooden sword embedded with obsidian blades, can sever a horse's head with a single stroke. The Atlatl, or spear thrower, extends human throwing range dramatically, allowing warriors to strike from distances that surprise enemies accustomed to shorter engagement ranges. Cotton armor soaked in brine provides remarkable protection against cutting weapons, while remaining light enough for the rapid movement that Aztec tactics demand. Battle itself follows ritualized patterns that balance military objectives with religious requirements. Campaigns typically begin after harvest, when food supplies are abundant and agricultural labor is unnecessary. Armies advance along established trade routes, their logistics supported by porters carrying supplies, and by tribute agreements with allied cities along the way. Formal declarations precede most conflicts, giving enemies opportunity to submit peacefully and accept tributary status. When battle commences, the goal remains capture rather than annihilation. Warriors seek to wound and subdue rather than kill, using specialized techniques designed to disable without destroying. The most prestigious captures involve hand-to-hand combat, where skill and courage determine outcomes. Mass slaughter serves no purpose when every living captive represents both divine nourishment and personal advancement. This system creates warriors of extraordinary individual skill and collective discipline. The Aztec military machine conquers not through technological superiority, but through training, motivation, and organizational excellence that transforms ordinary men into instruments of imperial expansion and cosmic maintenance. The marketplace breathes with the rhythm of an empire. Each morning, as mist rises from Lake Texcoco, Tlatelolco transforms into the commercial heart of Mesoamerica, a gathering place where 60,000 souls converge daily to exchange the wealth of conquered lands. Canoes arrive in endless procession along the canals, their hulls heavy with tribute and trade goods from distant provinces. Merchants unload cacao beans from the humid lowlands of Soconusco, jade from Guatemala, obsidian from the volcanic highlands, cotton from the coastal plains. The waterways function as arteries, pumping commerce into the city's economic core. The market sprawls across a plaza larger than any European square of this era. Spanish observers who later witnessed this spectacle struggle to find comparisons, eventually settling on descriptions that evoke the great markets of Constantinople and Rome. Yet, Tlatelolco surpasses even these legendary bazaars in organization and scale. Specialized sections divide the marketplace into distinct commercial zones. Feather workers display their iridescent creations in one quarter, while goldsmiths hammer precious metals in another. Potters arrange their wares in careful rows. Herbalists offer remedies for every ailment known to Aztec medicine. Slave traders conduct their business in designated areas, where captives await purchase for domestic service or sacrifice. The cacao bean serves as universal currency, its value standardized across the empire. A rabbit costs 30 beans. A turkey egg demands 3. A slave might fetch 100 beans or more, depending on skills and condition. Larger transactions employ cotton cloaks called quashtli, each worth approximately 80 cacao beans. This dual currency system enables commerce at every scale, from humble vegetable purchases to substantial property transfers. Market judges patrol the aisles, settling disputes and punishing fraudulent merchants. Aztec commercial law demands honest weights and measures. Those caught cheating face severe penalties, including death for the most egregious offenses. This judicial oversight creates an environment of remarkable trust, where strangers conduct business with confidence and fair dealing. The Pochteka, professional long-distance merchants, occupy an unusual position within Aztec society. These traders venture far beyond imperial borders, carrying luxury goods to distant lands while gathering intelligence for future conquests. They travel in armed caravans, defending their merchandise against bandits and hostile peoples. Their journeys last months or years, taking them to the Maya lands, the Zapotec kingdoms, and territories the Aztec armies have not yet reached. Upon returning, successful Pochteka host elaborate feasts that display their wealth while carefully avoiding any appearance of challenging noble status. They enter the city at night, concealing their profits from envious eyes. This deliberate humility protects them from accusations of overstepping their commoner origins, even as their wealth rivals that of minor nobility. The marketplace also serves as information exchange. News travels along trade routes faster than official messengers. Merchants learn of distant rebellions, foreign armies, and natural disasters before imperial officials receive formal reports. This commercial intelligence network provides the empire with early warning of threats and opportunities alike. Women dominate many market sectors, particularly food preparation and textile sales. Female vendors control the distribution of prepared meals, tortillas, tamales, and the countless dishes that feed the urban population. Their economic independence grants them social standing unusual in Mesoamerican societies. Beyond mere commerce, Tlatelolco functions as the empire's central nervous system, connecting conquered provinces through bonds of trade that reinforce political submission. Tribute flows inward while manufactured goods flow outward, creating economic dependencies that strengthen imperial control more effectively than military garrisons alone. The common people rise with the sun, their lives measured by the rhythm of labor and devotion that sustains an empire. The Masihualtin, those who form the vast majority of Aztec society, inhabit a world of structured obligation and quiet dignity. Their existence unfolds within adobe homes clustered in Calpulli neighborhoods, each family unit contributing to the greater whole through work, tribute, and unwavering service. Morning begins before first light. Women kneel at grinding stones, transforming dried maize into mesa through hours of repetitive motion. The sound of stone against stone echoes through neighborhoods as tortillas take shape on clay griddles called comals. This daily bread requires 3 to 4 hours of preparation, a task that defines female labor from adolescence until death. Beans simmer in clay pots. Chili peppers add fire to simple stews. Squash and tomatoes supplement meals that rarely include meat, reserved for festivals and the fortunate. Men depart for fields as dawn breaks. Those working Chinampas paddle canoes through canal networks to floating gardens requiring constant attention. Others walk to communal lands assigned by Calpulli leaders, where they cultivate maize, beans, and maguey plants. Agricultural labor follows the sacred calendar, with planting and harvest times determined by priests who read celestial signs. The work continues until midday, heat forces rest, then resumes until evening shadows lengthen across the valley. Children learn their futures early. Boys accompany fathers to fields, absorbing agricultural knowledge through observation and practice. Girls remain with mothers, mastering the domestic arts that will define their adult lives. By age 7, formal education begins at local Telpashkali schools, where boys receive military training alongside practical skills. Girls learn weaving, cooking, and religious duties that prepare them for marriage and motherhood. The family home reflects social standing through modest variations. Commoner houses consist of single rooms with packed earth floors and thatched roofs. Sleeping mats roll out at night, stored during day to create working space. A hearth occupies the central area, its smoke escaping through gaps in the roof. Pottery vessels line walls alongside grinding stones and weaving implements. Outside, small gardens provide herbs and vegetables supplementing market purchases. Marriage transforms young people into full community members. Parents arrange unions through intermediaries who negotiate between families. The bride enters her husband's household, bringing woven textiles demonstrating her skill. Wedding ceremonies involve ritual speeches, shared food, and the symbolic tying of garments. The new couple receives land allocation from Calpulli authorities, beginning their contribution to community tribute obligations. Tribute defines common existence. Each household owes labor, goods, and military service to overlords ascending from local nobles through provincial governors to the emperor himself. Failure brings punishment, ranging from public humiliation to enslavement. The system extracts surplus production while maintaining social order through mutual obligation and fear. Religious observance punctuates daily routine. Household shrines receive offerings of copal incense and food. Neighborhood temples host ceremonies marking the 18-month ritual calendar. Commoners participate in festivals through dance, fasting, and occasional blood offerings drawn from earlobes or tongues. The cosmic order demands constant attention, and even the poorest family understands their role in sustaining the sun's journey. Death comes frequently to common households. Infant mortality claims many children before their 5th year. Disease, accident, and warfare thin adult populations. The deceased receive burial beneath house floors or cremation, depending on circumstances of death. Warriors fallen in battle and women dying in childbirth achieve honored afterlives, while others descend to Mictlan through 9 challenging levels. Despite hardship, the Masi-Hualtan find meaning in community bonds, family continuity, and participation in cosmic maintenance. Their labor builds temples, feeds armies, and sustains the nobility whose power depends entirely upon common hands. The artisans work in sacred silence, their hands channeling divine creativity into earthly form. In workshops scattered throughout Tenochtitlan, master craftsmen transform raw materials into objects of transcendent beauty, each piece carrying spiritual significance far beyond mere decoration. These creators occupy a unique position in Aztec society, honored for skills believed to flow directly from the gods themselves. The Amanteca, feather workers of legendary reputation, practice an art form unmatched anywhere in the known world. Their workshops cluster in the Amantlan district, where generations of families guard techniques passed from father to son across centuries. Quetzal feathers arrive from distant Guatemala, their iridescent green worth more than gold by weight. Scarlet macaw plumes journey from tropical lowlands. Hummingbird feathers, impossibly delicate, require tweezers of bone to handle without damage. The process demands years of apprenticeship before a craftsman touches precious materials. Young workers begin with common feathers, learning to sort by color, size, and quality. They master the preparation of backing cloths woven from maguey fiber, study the adhesives derived from orchid bulbs, and practice cutting techniques that waste nothing. Only after demonstrating complete competence do they advance to noble commissions. A single feathered shield might require 6 months of labor. The Amanteca first creates a paper pattern, then builds layers of common feathers as foundation. Precious plumes overlay this base, each positioned with geometric precision. The finished work shimmers with colors that shift as light plays across surfaces, creating effects that seem almost supernatural to observers. Gold workers command equal reverence, their craft arriving relatively recently from southern regions, but quickly mastered by Aztec artisans. The lost wax casting technique allows creation of objects of stunning complexity. A goldsmith first sculpts his design in beeswax, coating it with clay that hardens around the form. Molten gold poured into this mold replaces the wax, which melts away. When the clay breaks open, a perfect metal replica emerges. These craftsmen produce labrets for noble lips, ear ornaments of spiral design, pectoral discs representing solar imagery, and countless other adornments marking status and religious devotion. Gold itself carries sacred associations with the sun, with divine radiance made tangible through human skill. The poets and philosophers gather in noble houses, composing flower songs that explore the deepest questions of existence. Nahuatl poetry achieves remarkable sophistication, employing paired metaphors and rhythmic structures that create multiple layers of meaning. A single phrase might reference flowers and songs simultaneously. the standard metaphor for artistic beauty and truth. These compositions address mortality with unflinching honesty. The poets acknowledge that all earthly glory fades, that even the mightiest warriors become dust, that jade shatters and gold melts. Yet, within this recognition of impermanence, they find reason for celebration rather than despair. Beauty exists precisely because it cannot last. The flower blooms knowing it will wilt, and this knowledge makes its colors more precious. Sculptors carve stone with obsidian tools, creating monumental works and intimate pieces alike. The great calendar stone, weighing over 20 tons, represents cosmic cycles in intricate relief. Smaller figures capture deities, animals, and human forms with remarkable naturalism. Each work serves religious function, connecting the physical world to spiritual realities through artistic transformation. The creative class enjoys privileges denied to common laborers, yet their freedom comes with obligations. They work for temples and palaces, producing objects that reinforce imperial power and religious authority. Their art serves the state even as it achieves genuine aesthetic transcendence. Women move through the empire as essential threads in a fabric woven from duty, devotion, and quiet power. Their presence shapes every aspect of Aztec civilization, from the humblest household to the sacred precincts of the Templo Mayor itself. The loom stands at the center of female existence. From earliest childhood, girls learn the sacred art of weaving, their small fingers guided by mothers and grandmothers in techniques passed through countless generations. The backstrap loom becomes an extension of the body, wooden beams anchored to posts, while weavers lean back to create tension in the threads. Cotton and maguey fibers transform under skilled hands into cloth that serves as currency, tribute, and artistic expression. Noble women produce textiles of extraordinary complexity. Intricate geometric patterns encode cosmic meanings, each design carrying symbolic weight understood by those who read such visual languages. The finest mantles require months of labor, their surfaces adorned with feathers, rabbit fur, and precious dyes extracted from cochineal insects and indigo plants. These garments clothe emperors and adorn temple statues, elevating weaving from craft to sacred practice. Marriage defines the transition from girlhood to womanhood. Matchmakers negotiate unions between families, considering lineage, profession, and astrological compatibility. The wedding ceremony unfolds over 4 days of ritual, culminating when the bride's mantle is tied to the groom's cloak, symbolizing their bound fates. Young wives enter their husband's household, assuming responsibilities for food preparation, child rearing, and domestic management. The grinding stone demands hours of daily labor. Women kneel before the metate before dawn, crushing dried maize into flour for tortillas and tamales. The rhythmic sound of stone against stone echoes through neighborhoods, a percussion marking time in every Aztec home. Meals emerge from this labor, sustaining families and honoring the gods who provided corn to humanity. Noble women occupy positions of genuine influence. They manage household economies, oversee servants, and control significant resources. Some inherit property and conduct business independently. The Cihuacoatl, a title meaning snake woman, designates one of the empire's highest administrative positions, though held by men. Its feminine name acknowledges female power in Aztec cosmology. Priestesses serve in temples throughout Tenochtitlan. Young women dedicate themselves to specific deities, maintaining sacred fires, preparing ritual foods, and participating in ceremonies. The goddess Tlazolteotl, receives confessions through her priestesses, who absolve sins and prescribe penances. Female religious specialists command respect and wield spiritual authority within their domains. Midwives hold life and death in their hands. These skilled women guide births, speaking warriors' words to laboring mothers, for childbirth represents a woman's battlefield. Those who die in labor achieve the same honored afterlife as warriors fallen in combat, accompanying the sun across the sky. Midwives bathe newborns, speak their first prophecies, and connect new lives to cosmic cycles. The marketplace reveals women as economic actors. Female vendors control stalls selling produce, prepared foods, textiles, and household goods. They negotiate prices, extend credit, and accumulate wealth through commercial skill. Some women achieve prosperity rivaling that of male merchants, their business acumen earning respect in a society that values economic success. Healers and herbalists practice medicine passed through female lineages. They know which plants ease childbirth, cure fevers, and treat wounds. Their knowledge encompasses both practical remedies and spiritual interventions, for illness often requires addressing supernatural causes alongside physical symptoms. Concubines and secondary wives occupy complex positions within noble households. They bear children who may inherit titles and property, their status dependent on their offspring's success. Some achieve influence exceeding that of primary wives, their intelligence and charm winning favor with powerful men. The empire depends on women's labor as surely as it depends on warriors' conquests. Their weaving clothes the population and fills tribute warehouses. Their cooking sustains families and feeds armies. Their childbearing produces the next generation of farmers, artisans, priests, and soldiers. Without women's ceaseless work, the magnificent civilization rising from Lake Texcoco's waters would simply cease to exist. The palace of Moctezuma II rises above Tenochtitlan like a world unto itself. Within its sprawling complex of over 300 rooms, the ninth Tlatoani of the Aztec Empire holds court over a realm stretching from ocean to ocean. His reign, beginning in 1502, transforms imperial governance into an elaborate theater of divine authority and absolute power. Each morning, the emperor emerges from private chambers where he has slept alone, attended only by trusted servants who approach on hands and knees. No person may look directly upon his face. Nobles entering his presence remove their fine mantles, donning rough maguey cloth to demonstrate humility before the living representative of Huitzilopochtli. 3 prostrations mark every approach, and speech directed toward him must be whispered, eyes cast perpetually downward. The palace itself functions as a city within the city. Separate wings house the emperor's many wives and concubines, his children, his personal zoo containing jaguars and eagles, his aviaries filled with exotic birds whose feathers supply royal artisans. Gardens bloom with flowers gathered from every conquered province, their perfumes mingling in courtyards where fountains splash into basins of polished stone. Tribute ceremonies define the rhythm of imperial power. Representatives from over 400 subject states arrive according to strict schedules, bearing the wealth of their provinces. From the coastal lowlands come cacao beans, rubber balls, jaguar pelts, and brilliant feathers. Mountain regions deliver gold dust, copper bells, and precious stones. Agricultural zones send maize, beans, cotton, and maguey fiber. Each delivery follows precise protocols recorded in painted books by royal scribes. The tribute lists reveal an empire of staggering abundance. Annual deliveries include over 7,000 cotton mantles, 400 bundles of quetzal feathers, 200 loads of cacao, and countless measures of gold, jade, and turquoise. Warehouses throughout the palace complex overflow with accumulated wealth, their contents redistributed to reward loyal nobles, supply military campaigns, and fund the endless construction projects that reshape the capital. Moctezuma presides over a council of 4 supreme advisors, each representing one of the city's great quarters. Below them, a hierarchy of judges, tax collectors, military commanders, and provincial governors extends imperial authority to the farthest reaches of conquered territory. Messages travel along networks of relay runners who can cover 300 kilometers in a single day, their reports keeping the emperor informed of events throughout his domain. The royal court operates according to rigid etiquette that separates the divine ruler from ordinary humanity. The emperor eats alone, hidden behind a golden screen, sampling dishes from hundreds of options prepared daily by palace cooks. He never wears the same garment twice, his discarded clothing distributed to favored nobles. When he walks through the city, servants sweep the ground before his feet and spread cotton cloths so his sandals never touch common earth. Yet beneath this elaborate ceremonial structure, Moctezuma governs with calculated intelligence. He expands the empire's borders through strategic warfare, incorporating new provinces into the tribute system. He maintains the delicate balance of the Triple Alliance while ensuring Tenochtitlan's dominance over its partners. He patronizes poets and philosophers, engaging in theological debates about the nature of the gods and the meaning of existence. The palace workshops produce the finest artworks in Mesoamerica. Featherworkers create mosaics of such delicacy that Spanish observers will later compare them to the finest European paintings. Goldsmiths cast ornaments using lost wax techniques that astonish metallurgists. Lapidaries carve jade and obsidian into objects of breathtaking beauty. All serve to magnify the glory of an emperor who embodies the empire itself. Yet beneath this magnificence, whispers of unease begin to circulate through the empire's corridors of power. The year 1509 brings the first of many strange occurrences that will haunt Moctezuma's remaining years upon the throne. A comet blazes across the night sky, its fiery tail stretching like a wound in the heavens. For 40 nights it burns above Tenochtitlan, visible to all who raise their eyes toward the stars. The priests consult their codices, searching ancient records for precedent. They find only warnings. Such celestial fire has preceded catastrophe before, marking the fall of Tula and the collapse of earlier kingdoms. Moctezuma orders increased sacrifices, hoping to appease whatever cosmic forces have sent this burning messenger. The following year brings stranger portents still. The waters of Lake Texcoco suddenly rise without storm or earthquake, flooding portions of the city and drowning hundreds. The lake has sustained Tenochtitlan for nearly 2 centuries, yet now it seems to turn against its children. Engineers work frantically to repair damaged causeways, while priests perform rituals at the water's edge, seeking to understand why Tlaloc, the rain deity, has unleashed such fury. In 1517, fishermen on the eastern coast encounter something unprecedented. Floating mountains appear on the horizon, bearing creatures with pale skin and hair upon their faces. These strangers speak unknown languages and wear metal that gleams like captured sunlight. They trade briefly with coastal peoples before departing, leaving behind only questions and a growing sense of dread. Moctezuma receives these reports in his palace, surrounded by advisors who struggle to interpret their meaning. The ancient prophecies speak of Quetzalcoatl's return from the eastern sea, the feathered serpent deity who departed long ago with promises to reclaim his kingdom. Could these pale strangers be divine messengers, or perhaps the god himself in unfamiliar form? The Templo Mayor itself seems to rebel against the empire. In 1518, the great temple dedicated to Huitzilopochtli catches fire without apparent cause. Flames consume the wooden superstructure, while priests scramble to save sacred objects. No lightning has struck, no torch has fallen. The fire appears from nowhere, burning with supernatural intensity before finally subsiding. Workers immediately begin reconstruction, but the damage to imperial confidence proves harder to repair. More omens accumulate like gathering storm clouds. A strange bird is captured bearing a mirror in its head, showing visions of armed warriors. A woman's voice echoes through the night streets, weeping for her children and warning of destruction to come. Two-headed creatures are born to noble families. Each sign feeds the growing anxiety that permeates Tenochtitlan's highest circles. Moctezuma retreats increasingly into consultation with priests and sorcerers. He dispatches spies to the coast, demanding detailed reports of any further sightings. He orders the construction of new temples and the expansion of sacrifice ceremonies. The cosmic machinery that has sustained the empire for generations seems to require ever more blood. Yet the sun rises each morning with diminishing certainty. The markets of Tlatelolco continue their daily commerce. Warriors still train in the Calmacac schools. Farmers tend their chinyampas as they have for generations. The empire's surface remains unchanged, its tribute flowing inward from 400 subject states. Yet, those closest to power sense that something fundamental has shifted in the cosmic order. By 1519, the omens have created an atmosphere of profound uncertainty. When messengers arrive with news that the floating mountains have returned, bearing hundreds of pale strangers with weapons that thunder like angry gods, Moctezuma faces a decision that will determine his empire's fate. The signs have spoken. Now, the emperor must interpret their meaning and choose how to greet whatever force approaches from the rising sun. The floating mountains materialize from morning mist on the Gulf Coast in the spring of 1519. 11 ships bearing 500 Spanish soldiers, 16 horses, and 14 cannons anchor near the sandy shores where the Totonac people watch in bewildered silence. Hernán Cortés, a minor nobleman from Extremadura seeking fortune and glory, steps onto Mesoamerican soil with ambitions that dwarf his modest expedition. The Totonacs of Chempoala become the first indigenous witnesses to European arrival. These coastal people live under Aztec dominion, paying heavy tribute in goods and sacrificial victims. Their resentment toward Tenochtitlan runs deep, and Cortés quickly recognizes this fracture in the empire's foundation. Through a remarkable chain of translation, communication becomes possible. A shipwrecked Spaniard named Geronimo de Aguilar speaks Mayan, while a enslaved noblewoman called Malintzin speaks both Mayan and Nahuatl. Together they bridge the linguistic gulf between worlds. Cortés establishes the settlement of Villarica de la Vera Cruz, creating legal authority independent of the Cuban governor, who authorized only exploration. He then makes a decision of extraordinary audacity. The ships are scuttled, their timbers stripped for construction. His men now face a simple reality: conquest or death. No retreat remains possible. The Totonac Lord of Sempoala reveals the empire's vulnerabilities. Tribute demands have grown crushing. subject peoples harbor generations of grievance. The Tlaxcalans to the west have never submitted to Aztec rule, maintaining fierce independence through constant warfare. Cortés absorbs this intelligence like a general studying enemy terrain. Messengers race toward Tenochtitlan, carrying painted accounts of the strangers. Artists depict the ships, the horses, the metal armor, the weapons that produce thunder and smoke. Moctezuma receives these reports in his palace, studying images of beings that match no category in Mesoamerican understanding. The horses appear as monstrous deer. The cannons seem to breathe fire. The pale men wear shells of gleaming metal. The emperor dispatches ambassadors bearing magnificent gifts. Gold ornaments, featherwork of extraordinary beauty, jade treasures, and elaborate costumes arrive at the Spanish camp. Moctezuma hopes these offerings will satisfy the strangers and encourage departure. Instead, the gold inflames Spanish desire. Cortés famously remarks that his men suffer from a disease of the heart that only gold can cure. The Spanish column begins its march inland in August. 400 soldiers, 15 horses, and several thousand Totonac warriors climb from tropical lowlands toward the central plateau. The journey covers 300 miles of challenging terrain. Mountain passes rise above 4,000 meters. Temperatures plunge from coastal heat to highland cold. Tlaxcala presents the first major test. These unconquered warriors attack the Spanish repeatedly over 2 weeks of fierce combat. Horses terrify infantry formations. Steel swords shatter obsidian clubs. Cannons devastate mass charges. Yet, Tlaxcalan courage nearly overwhelms the expedition through sheer numbers and determination. Spanish casualties mount. Horses die. Ammunition dwindles. Then, Tlaxcalan strategy shifts. Their leaders recognize that these strangers possess unprecedented military technology. More importantly, they share a common enemy. Generations of flower wars have filled Tlaxcalan hearts with hatred for Tenochtitlan. An alliance forms that will prove decisive. Thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors join the Spanish column, transforming a modest expedition into a formidable army. The combined force approaches Cholula, a sacred city allied with the Aztecs. What occurs there remains disputed across centuries. Cortés claims discovery of an ambush plot. The result proves undeniable. Thousands of Cholulan nobles and warriors die in a coordinated massacre. Temples burn. The message spreads throughout the empire. These strangers combine terrifying weapons with ruthless purpose. Moctezuma's options narrow with each passing week. His armies vastly outnumber the approaching force. Yet, the omens weigh heavily. The strangers arrive from the east, direction of the morning star, in a year sacred to Quetzalcoatl. Their pale skin and bearded faces match no known peoples. Their weapons exceed anything in Mesoamerican experience. The emperor chooses diplomacy over confrontation. More gifts flow toward the Spanish camp. More ambassadors deliver messages of welcome mixed with warnings. The strangers continue their advance, now accompanied by enemies who know every path to the imperial heart. The mountain passes of the Sierra Nevada stand between the advancing column and the heart of empire. November winds carry the first bite of winter across volcanic slopes, rising over 4,000 meters above the distant sea. The Spanish force, swollen now with thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors, begins its final ascent toward the Valley of Mexico. The path between the twin volcanoes, Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl, offers the most direct route. Smoke curls from Popocatépetl's crater, a constant reminder of forces beyond human control. Indigenous guides lead the column through pine forests where snow dusts the higher elevations. Horses struggle on the thin air. Men from the Caribbean lowlands gasp with each step. Yet the Tlaxcalan allies move with practiced ease through terrain they have known for generations. The view from the pass stops the Spanish column in its tracks. Below stretches the Valley of Mexico, a vast basin cradling 5 interconnected lakes that shimmer at the autumn light. Cities dot the shorelines. Causeways stretch across the water like white ribbons. And there, at the center of Lake Texcoco, rises Tenochtitlan itself. Nothing in European experience prepares the strangers for this sight. Venice, the greatest water city of the Old World, would fit within a fraction of this urban expanse. The great pyramid temples pierce the morning haze. Palaces and gardens spread across islands connected by bridges and canals. 200,000 souls inhabit this metropolis, making it larger than any city the conquistadors have ever seen. The descent into the valley proceeds through a landscape of intensive cultivation. Terraced hillsides support maize fields. Irrigation channels direct water to orchards heavy with fruit. Villages cluster around local temples, their inhabitants watching the strange procession with mixtures of curiosity and fear. Moctezuma sends yet another embassy. Nobles bearing gold and precious feathers meet the column with elaborate courtesies. They convey the emperor's invitation to enter his capital as honored guests. The gifts grow more magnificent with each encounter, yet the underlying message remains consistent. The strangers are welcome to visit, but they should understand the power they approach. The causeway from Iztapalapan stretches 8 kilometers across the lake toward Tenochtitlan. It measures wide enough for 8 horsemen to ride abreast. Drawbridges at intervals can be raised to isolate sections. The engineering represents centuries of accumulated expertise in managing the lake environment. Crowds line the causeway as the column approaches. Canoes cluster in the surrounding waters, their occupants straining for glimpses of the strangers and their animals. The procession moves slowly, deliberately, toward the southern entrance of the imperial capital. At the causeway's end, beneath a canopy of green quetzal feathers and gold thread, Moctezuma II waits to greet his guests. Nobles support his arms in the traditional gesture of royal dignity. His sandals feature golden soles that mark his sacred status. No commoner may look directly upon his face. The meeting of 2 worlds occurs on the 8th of November, 1519. The emperor descends from his litter. Cortés dismounts from his horse. Through translators, formal greetings pass between representatives of civilizations that have developed in complete isolation from each other for 15,000 years. Moctezuma leads the strangers into his city. They pass through neighborhoods of whitewashed houses, past markets filled with goods from across the empire, along canals busy with canoe traffic. The scale and organization exceed anything in their experience. Some will later write that they wondered whether they dreamed. The emperor houses his guests in the palace of his father, Axayacatl. The complex provides ample space for the entire Spanish force and their Tlaxcalan allies. Servants attend to every need. Food arrives in abundance. The strangers find themselves surrounded by luxury beyond imagination, yet also completely surrounded by a city of warriors who could overwhelm them in hours. The transformation begins within days of arrival. What appears as honored hospitality reveals itself as something far more complex, a delicate dance of power where neither party fully controls the steps. The Spanish commander recognizes his vulnerability immediately. His small force occupies a palace at the heart of a city containing perhaps 200,000 inhabitants. The causeways connecting Tenochtitlan to the mainland could be severed in moments. Canoes beyond counting fill the canals. Every market, every temple, every rooftop holds potential warriors. The strangers have walked willingly into a trap of their own making. Within a week, Cortés makes his audacious move. Using the pretext of an attack on Spanish forces at the coast, he confronts Moctezuma directly. The emperor must accompany him to the Spanish quarters. The request carries the weight of demand. Guards with steel weapons stand ready. The threat remains unspoken but unmistakable. Moctezuma agrees, whether from calculation, religious conviction, or simple shock at such unprecedented boldness. The divine ruler of the Aztec world walks into captivity. He takes up residence in the palace of Axayacatl alongside his captors. Servants continue attending him. Nobles still seek audiences. The machinery of empire continues functioning. Yet everything has changed. The months that follow create a strange, suspended reality. Moctezuma rules his empire from comfortable imprisonment. He issues orders, receives tribute, maintains the rituals that keep the cosmos in motion. Spanish soldiers guard his person constantly. He plays games with his captors, teaches them about his civilization, accepts their religious instruction with apparent interest. The relationship between prisoner and jailers grows unexpectedly familiar. Meanwhile, the strangers explore their gilded cage. They discover the treasure rooms of Axayacatl's palace, walls stacked with gold and precious stones accumulated over generations. They witness ceremonies at the Templo Mayor, watching with horror and fascination as priests maintain the cosmic order through blood. They map the city's defenses, count its warriors, assess its vulnerabilities. The Spanish presence destabilizes everything it touches. Traditional authority structures begin fracturing. Some nobles see opportunity in the chaos, others counsel patience, still others urge immediate action against the invaders. The empire's subject peoples watch carefully, sensing that the power which has dominated them for generations now shows unexpected weakness. Religious tensions mount steadily. The strangers demand that human sacrifice cease, that Christian symbols replace the old gods atop the Great Pyramid. Moctezuma attempts compromise, offering space for both faiths. But the priests of Huitzilopochtli cannot accept such accommodation. The gods require their sustenance. The sun must rise. The cosmic machinery cannot simply stop. Spring of 1520 brings crisis from an unexpected direction. A second Spanish expedition arrives at the coast, sent to arrest Cortés for exceeding his authority. The commander must leave Tenochtitlan to confront this threat, entrusting the city to his lieutenant Pedro de Alvarado. The departure removes the one figure who has maintained the delicate equilibrium. Alvarado lacks his commander's political instincts. When the Aztecs prepare for the festival of Toxcatl, a major celebration honoring Tezcatlipoca, the lieutenant sees only a gathering of warriors. The ceremony brings the nobility together in the temple precinct, adorned in their finest regalia, unarmed according to sacred custom. What happens next shatters any remaining possibility of peaceful coexistence. Spanish soldiers seal the exits of the ceremonial space. Then they attack. The massacre of the temple precinct kills hundreds of the empire's highest nobles, warriors, and priests. Blood soaks the sacred stones. The flower of Aztec aristocracy falls to steel in moments. The city erupts. Warriors who have watched and waited for months finally act. The Spanish and their allies find themselves besieged within the palace complex. Moctezuma attempts to calm his people, appearing on a rooftop to address the crowds. Stones fly upward. The emperor falls, wounded by his own subjects. Within days he dies, whether from these injuries or other causes remains disputed. The strangers now face the full fury of an awakened empire. Food and water supplies dwindle. Attacks continue day and night. The treasure that seems such a prize becomes a deadly burden. Escape appears impossible, yet remaining means certain death. The night of June 30th, 1520, descends upon Tenochtitlan with rain and darkness. Within the besieged palace, desperate preparations unfold in whispered urgency. The Spanish commander has made his decision. Remaining means annihilation. The only path to survival leads across the western causeway toward Tlacopan, 8 kilometers of exposed road stretching over black water. Portable bridges constructed from palace timbers will span the gaps where Aztec warriors have removed sections of the causeway. Gold bars, jewels, and precious objects are distributed among soldiers and Tlaxcalan allies. Many load themselves with treasure, unable to abandon the wealth that brought them to this distant land. Others, wiser perhaps, take only weapons and what food they can carry. The column begins moving near midnight. Rain muffles footsteps on stone. The vanguard reaches the first canal gap and positions the portable bridge. Soldiers cross in tense silence. For precious minutes, the escape proceeds undetected through sleeping streets. Then a woman drawing water spots the fleeing column. Her cry pierces the night. Drums thunder from temple summits. Conch shells wail across the lake. Tenochtitlan awakens to pursue its enemies. The causeway transforms into a corridor of death. Canoes materialize from darkness, warriors hurling javelins and stones from both sides of the narrow road. The portable bridges jam in the first gaps, unable to be freed as bodies pile upon them. Soldiers plunge into the lake, dragged down by armor and gold. Tlaxcalan allies fall by hundreds. Horses scream and tumble into black water. The middle sections of the column face the worst carnage. Cut off from both vanguard and rear guard, soldiers fight in isolated clusters. The treasure they carry becomes their doom, precious metal pulling drowning men beneath the surface. Lake Texcoco swallows gold and bodies alike. Those who reach the far shore stagger onto the mainland at Tlacopan, bloodied and broken. The Spanish commander sits beneath a great cypress tree, surveying the remnants of his force. Tears streak his face. Nearly 600 Spanish soldiers have perished. Over 1,000 Tlaxcalan warriors lie dead in the lake or upon the causeway. The treasure of Moctezuma rests at the bottom of the canals. This night will be remembered as La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. Yet, the survivors do not pause to mourn. Aztec pursuit continues with first light. The battered column must reach Tlaxcalan territory or face complete destruction. For 6 days, the retreat continues through hostile country. Aztec forces harry the column constantly. At Otumba, a vast army blocks the path to safety. The survivors face annihilation on an open plain, surrounded by warriors confident of final victory. The battle that follows demonstrates why this small force remains dangerous even in defeat. Cavalry charges break through massed infantry. The Spanish commander himself leads a desperate thrust toward the Aztec command group, identifiable by elaborate standards and featherwork. When the enemy general falls, his army scatters in confusion according to Mesoamerican military tradition. The survivors reach Tlaxcala, their alliance with this enemy of the Aztecs proving salvation. Here they rest, heal, and begin planning return. Ships arrive at the coast with reinforcements. Smallpox, introduced during the occupation, spreads through the Valley of Mexico with devastating efficiency. The empire that expelled these strangers now faces an invisible enemy against which obsidian blades offer no defense. The invisible enemy strikes first. Smallpox races through the Valley of Mexico during the winter of 1520 into 1521, claiming perhaps half the population of Tenochtitlan before any Spanish soldier returns. Among the dead lies Cuitlahuac, the warrior emperor who expelled the invaders, his reign lasting merely 80 days. Leadership passes to Cuauhtémoc, a young prince of perhaps 25 years, who inherits a city already dying. The Spanish return transformed. Cortés commands over 900 European soldiers now, reinforced by ships and men originally destined for other expeditions. More significantly, tens of thousands of indigenous warriors march alongside them. Tlaxcala provides the largest contingent, but Texcoco, once pillar of the Triple Alliance, has fractured in succession disputes, with one faction welcoming the strangers. The coalition assembling against Tenochtitlan numbers perhaps 200,000 fighters. The siege begins with an engineering marvel: 13 brigantines, small warships constructed in Tlaxcala and carried in pieces over the mountains, launch onto Lake Texcoco in late April. These vessels transform the strategic equation entirely. The causeways that once protected the island city become death traps. Their bridges removed, but the narrow passages now swept by cannon fire from the water. Cuauhtémoc understands the mathematics of his situation. The aqueducts from Chapultepec fall to enemy control, cutting fresh water to the city. The causeways become contested ground where fighting rages daily. Yet the young emperor refuses surrender, organizing resistance with desperate ingenuity. The Aztec response adapts to new realities. Canoes mass in the thousands, attacking the brigantines in coordinated swarms. Warriors learn to recognize the reload time of Spanish firearms, timing charges to exploit these vulnerable moments. Pits dug into causeway surfaces trap cavalry. The defenders fight for every temple platform, every canal crossing, every rooftop. May bleeds into June, June into July. The siege grinds forward in brutal increments. Spanish and Allied forces advance along the causeways by day, only to find positions retaken by night. Cortés orders buildings demolished systematically, filling canals with rubble to prevent Aztec counterattacks through the waterways. The city that amazed the conquistadors upon first sight now disappears block by block. Starvation joins disease as ally to the besiegers. The floating gardens that once fed hundreds of thousands lie abandoned or destroyed. Rats become precious food. Tree bark and leather provide sustenance. Bodies of the dead, whether from combat or smallpox, lie unburied in streets where fighting prevents collection. The final assault begins in August. Allied forces pour through breaches in the defenses, no longer content with cautious advance. The great marketplace of Tlatelolco, where 60,000 once traded daily, becomes the last redoubt. Here, Cuauhtémoc makes his stand, surrounded by the remnants of Aztec nobility and the warriors who refuse surrender. On August 13th, 1521, a Spanish brigantine intercepts a canoe attempting to flee the fallen city. Aboard sights Cuauhtémoc, captured while seeking to continue resistance elsewhere. The young emperor reportedly asks Cortés to kill him with the obsidian blade at the Spanish commander's belt. The request goes unfulfilled. Tenochtitlan lies in ruins. The great temples stand shattered, their sacred images cast down. The causeways that carried tribute from 400 subject states now carry only rubble and corpses. The population that numbered perhaps 200,000 has been reduced to perhaps 30,000 survivors, many bearing smallpox scars. The destruction represents more than military defeat. An entire cosmological system collapses with the temples. The sun that required blood to rise each morning continues its journey without human sacrifice. The calendar that measured sacred time loses its keepers. The poetry and philosophy cultivated in noble schools falls silent as their practitioners perish. Yet, destruction proves incomplete. The survivors carry forward language, agricultural knowledge, artistic traditions, and memories. The conquerors build their churches directly atop the temple platforms, incorporating Aztec stonework into colonial foundations. Mexico City rises from Tenochtitlan's bones, its streets following ancient causeways, its central plaza occupying the sacred precinct where the Templo Mayor once touched the sky. The eagle and serpent endure on the Mexican flag, the founding vision transformed into national symbol. Nahuatl words enter Spanish and eventually English. Chocolate, tomato, avocado carry Aztec names across the world. The civilization that fell in 1521 continues shaping the present, its echoes resonating through every generation that inherits its legacy. The legacy refuses to remain buried beneath colonial cobblestones. 5 centuries after the siege, the Aztec world continues surfacing through the foundations of modern Mexico, emerging in unexpected moments when construction crews strike ancient stone or archaeologists uncover offerings sealed since the days of Moctezuma. Mexico City sprawls across the drained lake bed where Tenochtitlan once floated, 22 million inhabitants walking streets that trace the paths of Aztec causeways. The Zocalo, one of the largest public squares on Earth, occupies the precise location of the sacred precinct. The Metropolitan Cathedral rises where priests once climbed the Templo Mayor. Colonial architects unknowingly built their Christian monuments using the very stones their predecessors had toppled from pyramid temples. In 1978, electrical workers digging near the cathedral encounter a massive carved disc depicting the dismembered moon goddess Coyolxauhqui. This accidental discovery triggers decades of excavation that reveal the Templo Mayor's foundations, layer upon layer of construction phases marking each ruler's expansion of the sacred mountain. Today, visitors descend into the archaeological zone and stand before offerings of jade, obsidian, and coral that Aztec priests deposited 500 years ago. The Nahuatl language survives in the mouths of nearly 2 million speakers across central Mexico. Indigenous communities in Puebla, Veracruz, and Guerrero maintain linguistic traditions stretching back to the migration from Aztlan. Words that Aztec merchants spoke in the markets of Tlatelolco now circulate globally. Chocolate derives from xocolatl, tomato comes from tomatl, avocado, coyote, chili, each carries Nahuatl origins into kitchens and conversations worldwide. The agricultural innovations of the Chinampas persist in Xochimilco, where floating gardens still produce vegetables for the capital's markets. Farmers pull their trajineras through canals that represent the last surviving fragments of the lake system that once surrounded Tenochtitlan. These waterways offer glimpses of the landscape that greeted the Mexica when they first beheld the eagle devouring the serpent. Mexican national identity embraces the Aztec heritage with profound ambivalence and pride. The flag bears the founding vision, the eagle perched upon the nopal cactus, serpent writhing in its beak. Currency features Aztec imagery. Streets and neighborhoods carry Nahuatl names. The mythological past provides a pre-colonial identity distinct from Spanish inheritance, a source of indigenous pride that survives centuries of colonial suppression. Museums across the world display Aztec treasures. The National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City houses the Sunstone, the massive calendar disc that once adorned the Templo Mayor. Featherwork shields, obsidian mirrors, gold ornaments, turquoise mosaics. These artifacts testify to artistic achievements that astonish the conquistadors and continue inspiring contemporary artists. The cosmic vision that drove the empire persists in transformed forms. Day of the Dead celebrations blend Aztec beliefs about death and ancestor veneration with Catholic observances. Marigold flowers, cempasúchil in Nahuatl, still guide spirits home during November rituals that echo pre-Columbian practices. The boundary between the living and the dead remains permeable in Mexican consciousness, a worldview inherited from civilizations that understood existence as cyclical rather than linear. Archaeological discoveries continue rewriting understanding of Aztec society. Ground-penetrating radar reveals buried structures beneath modern buildings. Genetic studies trace population movements and disease impacts. Each excavation season brings new offerings, new insights, new questions about the people who built an empire on a lake island and watched it fall to strangers from across the sea. The Aztec story resonates because it encompasses the full spectrum of human experience, ambition and artistry, cruelty and devotion, triumph and catastrophe. Their civilization demonstrates both the heights human societies can achieve and the fragility of even the mightiest empires. The sun warriors who believe they sustain the cosmos through sacrifice left behind a legacy that outlasted their temples, their armies, and their gods. Thank you for journeying through the complete history of the Aztec Empire. If these stories of ancient civilizations captivate you, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next exploration into the remarkable worlds that shaped human history.